I'm Frank Vaughn. It's July 7th, 2025, and I'm already smiling like a Cheshire cat because I find something very funny. Now, this is a two-part joke. The first part of the joke is the Ontario Opportunities Fund. Now, what do you think the Ontario Opportunities Fund is? Do you think it loans businesses money so that they can create real growth or does anything productive? No, this is how you can make a contribution to help reduce Ontario's debt and claim a tax credit so you can take your hard-earned dollars that are coming back to you because they took too much. They took too much out of you. You can choose to donate them to Doug Ford's overspending campaign. Now, the Opportunities Fund has been around for a long time. As long as I was filing taxes in Ontario, I'd have a chuckle at the end right before I'd cut the check because right at the bottom, I think it's on the last page of the return, actually, you can choose to donate it. Now, how many people do? I was actually shocked at how much money it collects. $154,000 from millions of taxpayers. I don't know who these people are. They're averaging $1,000 a piece. 1,530 donations, a jump from amounts the program pulled in over the past decade, no doubt. I can't believe it's that high. Who in their right mind does this? Well, apparently Donald Trump, because in the big, beautiful bill, the Trump administration started accepting Venmo payments to help pay down the national debt. As the president's big, beautiful bill is poised to add trillions to the national debt, the U.S. Treasury is offering Americans the chance to help pay it down. There you go, Canada. You managed to export one idea to the United States. I absolutely love the picture of Donald Trump they chose for this article. But wait, there's more. On the website, there is a page titled Gifts to Reduce the Public Debt, where U.S. citizens can make a contribution to reduce the national debt via their bank account, debit or credit card, or newly a Venmo or PayPal account. Now, I will say, this is an improvement on the Ontario Opportunities Fund, where you can only donate the money that they've already taken from you that they're giving a little bit back of. The Americans have said, hey, if you want to empty your bank account into the national deficit, you can go right ahead. We got every avenue available to you. Credit card. Pay down the national debt with your 22, 25, 28% interest credit card. If you want to, Uncle Sam's got your back. Now, unfortunately, we have to move on in the comedy show to what's going on in Canada. Now, admittedly, this was yesterday, but still, again, another article about some guy just trying to sing some Christian music in Diverse Central Park. And this is the thing, in Diverse Central Park, community-concerned U.S. Christian musicians concert could sow division. Diversity. Division, diversity, division. They have the same sound at the very beginning of the words because they have things in common. You can't be diverse if you're not dividing humanity into different categories and picking which ones you promote and which ones you actively suppress, which is pretty much anything European. And while CBC is greatly concerned about musicians and them coming into Canada and daring to play their music that is pro-family, pro-God, pro-the United States, pro-President Trump, because only certain types of diversity at Diverse Central Park are welcome. Other types of diversity are excluded. What else is making the rounds in Canada right now? Canadians frustrated as U.S. Border Patrol is now rejecting visitors over purpose of entry rules. So basically, this article finds one guy who was refused entry into the United States, something that happens pretty much all the time. And then if you go on Reddit and you go on social media, you'll see another outrage cycle on the left because this perfectly routine thing that always happened. I am struck, almost awestruck, that Canadians who have done the whole elbows up thing, the citizens now, forget the politicians because the politicians are done with it. They've dispensed with it. It's just Canadians live action role playing like it's a real thing. They've done the elbows up thing. We're doing boycotts. Americans are getting screamed at in the street randomly. I saw a video. Just because they're Americans, they're getting accosted in the street. And Americans have no idea what's going on. We've become so offensive, so rude, so belligerent about it. And then we have the audacity to turn around and get upset because the media has concocted or found one example of a routine denial of entry, and we act like we're victimized? It's like the person that, again, the little guy who punches the big guy 5 or 6 times, and then finally the big guy gives him a swat, and then he cries victim. That's Canada in a nutshell. Now, what's going on in the world right now? And in fairness, let's give CBC an opportunity to give us the most important and relevant news of the day for Canadians, because we've got a big trade problem with the United States. We've been hung out to dry by Europe, which we're going to get into next, but let's just see what's on the front page. UK will recognize Palestinian state unless Israel agrees to ceasefire. So we're talking about Palestine and Israel and the UK. Canada doesn't really factor in here. Report suggests arms still flow from Canada to Israel despite denials. Well, we know that capital flows from Canada to Hamas and Hezbollah. I've talked about it in previous videos. Here's a video from 5 months ago. Country reports on terrorism in 2020. And why are you talking?
From Mexico.
I'm talking right now. I'm trying to provide an update. Why don't you go get a haircut? Either way, long-haired me covered this at length, how we had this terror problem. It wasn't just that there were entries getting into the United States, but it was that we are a known, officially at all levels of government, openly known international hub for the money laundering for terror networks in the world. So, of course, that's not on CBC's front page. What is on the CBC front page, and the popular now heading it up, Justin Trudeau and Katy Perry spotted dining together at high-end Montreal restaurant. The CBC reader, and there may only be one of them because there's not that many, finds that to be the most important thing going on. So let's have a look. I'm just going to summarize it like this. I fully endorse Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau hooking up. I think that they are a perfect match for each other. Nowhere on the front page, though, is what I would say the most important story for Canadians. Displayed, Canada-U.S. trade negotiations at intense phase, Carney says, as deadline looms, both sides trying to reach some sort of agreement on Friday. The first thing I want to highlight is the quote that CBC leads with: Canadians don't deserve the uncertainty that's been thrust upon them. They want the right kind of resolution. They want a deal that makes sense for Canada. That's obviously not true, because the majority of Canadians still voted for the Liberal Party of Canada and the federal NDP. The majority of Canadians don't want fair deals. They don't want certainty, because it is 10 years of those two parties governing that has delivered us to this. Not Donald Trump. He's only been around for 6 months this time round. What we did over those 4 years was insult him, insult the former presidency, insult the leniency, insult the best trading relationship that we've ever had, insult the American people, insult Elon Musk, insult some poor singer that's just trying to ply his trade in Canada. We haven't really had a lot of luck with Canada, Trump told reporters on Friday outside the White House. I think Canada could be one where there's just a tariff, not really a negotiation. Canada, at least at a leadership level, not all the people. Carney's right in that way. Some people, the people who did not vote for Carney and the NDP, and even for the CPC, although the CPC voter was voting for change. The fact is, Pierre Poilievre positioned himself almost identical to Mark Carney vis-a-vis the United States, which was doomed to tank our relationship with our southern partners. Now, what has happened? And I think this is the most important thing. The headline from Zero Hedge, submitted by Thomas Colby, how Trump just turned Europe into a vassal market. And we don't really need to go through too much of this stuff to understand the geopolitical earthquakes that are occurring as a result of Europe's position in regards to green energy. They have decided to go down that road. A warning to Canadians as the electric vehicle mandate starts biting into reality here in Canada. We should all defy it. The provinces should defy it. I don't know why Moe and Smith are wasting time, but I digress. Europe's already down this road, and it's an abject failure for Europe. In prosecuting the war in Ukraine and Western foreign policy before the war began, because we're talking from 2014 to 2022, Europe was just gradually getting ready to shoot itself in the foot. And after 2022, they've just been firing round after round after round into both at the same time. Shotgun blast, too, like good buckshot, blowing holes right through it. It's not just green energy, it's cutting off what Europe has always needed. Easily available Russian energy. You know how I talk about how Canada's greatest asset, and Clyde and others have talked about this, is the proximity of Canada to the United States, which is what creates the trading relationship that we have. Europe has the same situation, if they just realized it, with the Russians. Russia as a national entity is not Asian. It's European. But it's always been the outcast. It's always been pushed to the outside. Even when it was trying to embrace, all the West was interested in doing was conquering more territory in Eastern Europe. Europe is resource poor. They're natural resource poor. And they can solve most of those problems by having a relationship with I was going to say the United States, and then I was going to say the USSR. But what I meant to say was Russia. And that was recognized in the building of pipelines and the things that happened in the late 90s and the early aughts, when sense looked like it might actually have a chance before it was actively torpedoed by central banking interests. We'll get into that. And financial interests. It's not even central banking interest. It's banking interest. It's financier class. They live in a different world. They think a different way. And we'll have to talk about that. But either way, Europe has cut itself off. And it requires energy from somewhere. And the United States has used that as leverage. Europe doesn't have leverage. We have even less in Canada. But Europe had very little leverage when it came to the United States because of what's happening in Ukraine. You could almost say that the foreign policy of the neocons in the United States empowered America to convert, as the sentence implies, Europe into a vassal state. Because if they're not going to get it from Russia, and they're already getting what they can from the Middle East, they have to get energy from somewhere else, primarily natural gas. So I guess they're going to reach across the Atlantic. Do you remember when the Canadian government said there was no future for liquid natural gas in Europe? And here we are. Once again, as I highlighted, the Europeans allowed Canada to lead the way in being offensive towards the Americans. And now they've cut their deal. It's not a great deal. It's short-term, not too bad for Europe, but long-term, it makes them even more dependent on the United States. Meanwhile, we're still up here pretending to be victims. We're still up here pretending and feigning elbows up. We still got a bunch of raging millions who think the United States is the greatest enemy that's ever lived, even though they've been our best and most reliable partner. And as we move towards August 1st, we may find out just how alone and isolated we are. Now, there's two outcomes here. Either Carney capitulates, and honestly, why wouldn't he? Keep the ball rolling, keep making money, make sure Brookfield's taken care of, make sure that China's taken care of, Europe's taken care of, the Americans are taken care of. He can manage the decline. He can just cut a deal because his state media and the other media that receive state funding will just push a story that a terrible deal is a good deal. They will do it. Even if that deal that he cuts gives it all away, even sacrifices some of Canada's sacred cows, the cartels that up to this point the government has so vociferously protected, they would spin it like a win one way or another. The other alternative, folks, is we don't get a deal. We become the enemy of the United States. We suffer under the tariffs. The economy, which is going to fall apart anyway, it's coming. Real estate is going to adjust. Everything's going to change. There's a lot of shifting parts here. You can't print forever. Central banks and banking itself requires periodic crashes, and we're overdue. But they might have a scapegoat to do it deep and do it harsh. It's coming anyway, but they might be able to blame the orange man for it, except Canada is going to be on our own, but it doesn't really matter. We're kind of like North Korea in that way. We're in an insulated bubble of understanding. We're very propagandized, hypnotized people, and we have imaginary constructs of what the world actually is and how we interface with the world. We're delusional, deeply delusional. Not as delusional as a North Korean, but we're as delusional as any free, so-called free society has ever been about our self-identity. So really, while the rest of the world is moving along, doing its own thing, Canada can be consumed inside of its own melodrama for the next 5 or 10 years. And that sucks. Because Canada, the system, Canada, the government, Canada, the bureaucracy, it ain't all that great. Which is why I wish Western leadership would start thinking outside the box. Now, there are those who say the reason that Smith and Moe are slow-rolling things is so that they can say that they exhausted every chance before they embrace a sovereignist path. I hope that's the case. But until that day comes, my job is to get on my pulpit and talk about the necessity of getting off the sinking ship which is being headed by a central banker and a champion of the banking system. Now, central banking should be known simply as the banking system because it's not just central banks that create money. Your bank creates money too, out of nothing. They just create it out of thin air. And this interview that you see on screen, you need to watch this. There's some people out there who are dead set against Tucker Carlson. I don't get it because he's doing some of the most powerful work he's ever done. Forget his tenure at Fox News. Go watch his long-form conversations. I think they're underserved by the algorithm the same way that I am, just at a different scale, because he invites guests on that talk about such a wide diversity of subjects that the algorithm doesn't know where to slot them. Now this, Richard Werner, man that I've been familiar with for years. I'm so glad to see him. Hopefully, maybe Joe Rogan can get this guy on. Maybe like all the big podcasters in the United States. Exposes the evils of the Fed and the link between banking, war, and the CIA, the boom-bust cycle by the people who create money out of nothing. One of the things that Richard Werner talks about is how in economics and the study of the economy, banking isn't a factor. Even though they're the masters of the universe that create money out of thin air, literally created out of thin air, they're not considered in economic models, which might go a long way to explaining why they're broken. Rather than talk about the subject matter in this interview, I would direct you to go and listen to it so you can understand that while you're working and slaving and scrubbing and dying and bleeding to make money so that you can pay the government, to make money so you can pay your bills and maybe, just maybe, have something left over at the end of the day to buy yourself some kind of small comfort, there's a whole class of people that are represented very well by Mark Carney. He's a believer in this class of people, the rulers of this world, who control the issuance of currency. And it's not just the central banks, it's the entire banking system that does this. Now, a good book, if this interview piques your interest, a good book to read is The Creature from Jekyll Island. It can talk about where this all emanates from. It gets into the history of gold certificates and everything else if you want to go deep. And alongside of it, if you understand Confessions of an Economic Hitman isn't directly linked to central banking. It's not really about central banking. But if you read the book and understand that the banking system itself is the spider in the middle of the web, and the web is often comprised of elements of the bureaucracy, whether it's the central intelligence agencies or the arms of the government, often exert themselves in the service of the financial economy. You understand, we talked about in a previous video about Gog Magog and how they are the symbolic princes of the city of London when they do the Lord's Mayor, whatever it is, Lord's Mayor show, I think is what it's called. Gog Magog lead the procession. The city of London, the king's not allowed to go there without invitation. They carved out a space within the heart of England at the height of imperial power that is completely untouchable by the Parliament and by the king. And from there, and through so many different organizations, They run the world economy. And economists are blind to their influence. They do not study, or they do not at least allow themselves to promote the study of central banking. Now, honestly, you should take the time. Go listen to Richard Werner talk about it, because this is a very, I think, effective interview. It gets a bit arcane. He's all over the place, but he's trying to explain big ideas. And believe it or not, in a 2 hour and 43-minute video, big ideas, it's not enough time. It's just not enough time. The issue here for Canadians, and the only issue that I'm trying to convey, and maybe I'm doing a bad job of importance, is that these interests are directly represented in Mark Carney, and he doesn't care about Canada. He doesn't care about the citizens. He doesn't care about the future. I have never been more afraid for this country. I actually misspeak. It's not the country I'm afraid for. The country, what is the country? The country, are we talking about the system? Are we talking about the state? Are we talking about the bureaucracy? Are we talking about the central banker who runs the place and the governor general whose signature he uses to destroy your future? I'm not talking about that. I could care less about the system. I'm not scared for it. I want it to go. I'm scared for the people of this country, not just the ones who know and can see this coming, but the ones, even those who are so arrogant and brash and are part of that psychology that I've been highlighting in this video and other videos, Canada's inferiority complex with a massive ego. I feel bad for them too, because they may be struck down by it without actually understanding what's doing the striking. For some of us, this is avoidable. For the majority, I don't think it is. We're in the worst possible hands that we could ever be in. And I don't care if I'm the only one who knows it.